Chapter 9 of Fuzzy Mud. Tuesday, November 2nd at 5:48 p.m. Weeds and clumps of grass poked through the cracks in the sidewalk. Tamiya crossed the street, sighed, then started up the wooden steps for her front porch. The middle step wobbled beneath her foot. Marshall's stupid shortcut had made her more than 2 hours late. Of course, she realized there had never been any shortcut. But that was the stupidest part about it. If he was afraid of Chad, he would have been safer walking along normal streets with lots of people and cars around. Her house was dark. Her mother occasionally worked late, and Tamiya hoped with all her heart that this was one of those days. She wore her house key on a chain around her neck. But when she reached for it, all she could feel was the empty chain. Filled with panic, she almost broke the chain as she tugged on it. Rotating it around her neck, she found the key. She breathed a huge sigh of relief. Somehow it had twisted back behind her. Still, she knew her troubles were far from over. She unlocked the door. "Hello?" she called as she opened the door. "I'm home." There was no answer. So far, so good. No questions, no lies. Tamiya switched on lights as she moved quickly through her house toward her bedroom. The rooms were smallish, and each was painted in bright, bold colors. A red and blue kitchen, a yellow living room, a green hallway. Tamiya's room was turquoise, with a yellow closet door and a yellow window frame. She dropped her backpack and collapsed onto the bed, but only for a moment. Her right hand still felt all tingly. She went into the bathroom and examined it under the light. Tiny red bumps were sprinkled all over her palm and fingers. She washed with antibacterial soap and hot water, as hot as she could stand. Using a washcloth, she cleaned the dirt and blood off her arms and legs. She was putting a Band-Aid on her knee when the phone rang. She wondered if her mother had been trying to call her for a long time. She rushed into her mother's bedroom and answered just before the fourth ring. "Hello? Hi, sweetie. Sorry I'm running so late." "That's okay," she said, guilt pumped through her veins. "How does pizza sound to you?" "Good." "You all right?" "I'm fine," Tamiya said, trying her best to sound normal. "Mushroom, peppers, and onions okay?" "No onions." "I'll tell them to just put the onions on my half." Tamiya didn't argue, even though she knew her half would still taste oniony. "I'll be home as soon as I can. Love you." "Love you too," Tamiya said. She waited until she heard the click on the other end, then hung up. She finished with the Band-Aid, then returned to her bedroom where she changed out of her dirty clothes and into her flannel pajamas. There was no reason that should make her mother suspicious, she thought. Now that the nights were colder, she and her mother both liked getting into their soft and cozy pajamas, although usually after dinner. They'd drink hot apple cider and either watch TV together or, more often lately, work side by side. She gathered up her dirty clothes and took them to the laundry nook. There was nothing suspicious about her doing her own laundry either. She'd been doing it ever since she'd needed her favorite purple top for Monica's birthday party last year. Once, when Marshall and his mother had been at her house, Tamiya's mother had said, "I suppose if Tamiya waited around for me to wash her clothes, she'd have to go to school naked." Tamiya had been so embarrassed and so mortified by what her mother had said, in front of Marshall, that she'd run to her room and hadn't come out until after Marshall and his mother had left. Even now, she blushed thinking about it. She dumped her dirty clothes into the washing machine, added soap, set the temperature, and then started it up. Listening to the swish of the water, she imagined she felt something like the way of a murderer felt after he successfully destroyed all the evidence. Her right hand was still tingling like crazy. She went into her mother's bedroom and searched the drawers and cabinets, not sure what she was searching for. She came across a blue jar of something called restorative hand cream. The label said it was for dry, cracked, and irritated skin. Tamiya removed the lid and dipped her fingers into the white, chalky ointment. She smeared it all over the bumpy spots. It felt cool and soothing. It seemed to work almost immediately. The bumps didn't look as red, and the tingling wasn't as bad. From the other side of the wall, she could hear the rattle and buzz of the garage door opening. Her mother was home. 2 times 4 equals 8. 2 times 8 equals 16. Her mother set down the pizza, kissed Tamiya on the cheek, and said, "Help yourself. I just need to answer this one email." The pizza box smelled of onions. Tamiya had to pick off a few strays before putting a slice on her plate. She had to do it all left-handed so as not to get any of the restorative hand cream on her food. One email turned into 6, but that was fine with Tamiya. The more her mother was wrapped up in work, the fewer questions Tamiya would have to answer. Her mother had made a salad as she'd read through her meals. She rarely did only one thing at a time. "So, did Miss Filbert like your report?" she asked as she set the salad on the table. "We ran out of time," Tamiya told her. "She didn't get to mine." "That's too bad," her mother said. "You worked so hard on it." Her mother's hair and eyes were dark like Tamiya's, but she had lighter skin. She liked colorful clothes. Her green eyeshadow matched her blouse. Tamiya shrugged. "I'll do it tomorrow. No one cares about Calvin Coolidge anyway." Tamiya would have preferred to give a report on a different president, but by the time Miss Filbert had gotten around to calling on her, all the good presidents had already been taken. That was typical. Tamiya had sat quietly with her hand raised, but then someone else had shouted, "I want Lincoln!" and then someone else had claimed Washington. Miss Filbert had assigned those presidents to the shouters, even though she had just told the class, "Sit quietly and wait until I call on you." It was Miss Filbert who had suggested Calvin Coolidge to Tamiya when it had finally been her turn. "He was a lot like you, Tamiya," she said. "They called him Silent Cal because he was known for being quiet." Miss Filbert had said "being quiet," as though it were some sort of abnormal behavior. "You're the one who just told everyone to sit quietly," Tamiya thought. After dinner, Tamiya and her mother were working side by side on the living room sofa. The TV was on, but they were hardly watching. Her mother had a computer on her lap, and Tamiya's notebook paper was on the coffee table next to her history book. She wasn't supposed to just look things up on the internet. Tablets and smartphones were prohibited at Woodbridge Academy. The headmistress, Mrs. Thaxton, wanted the students to do it the old-fashioned way. Even calculators were off limits. Tamiya's mother looked up from her laptop and asked if Tamiya had washed her hands after dinner. "You have pizza sauce on you." Tamiya looked at her hand. It wasn't pizza sauce. Despite her mother's hand cream, the red bumps had returned. They had gotten bigger, and there seemed to be more of them. The tingling sensation had also returned, although she hadn't noticed it so much until now. She couldn't keep it from her mother any longer. "It's not pizza," she said. I think I might have some kind of rash." She held out her hand. Tamiya and her mother each had the same habit of biting their lower lip when thinking hard. Her mother was biting it now as she examined Tamiya's rash. "It feels all funny, too," Tamiya told her. "Do you know how you got it?" "I noticed it after school," was all she could say. She had promised Marshall not to tell her mother or anyone else about the woods. "I put some of your stuff on it." "What stuff?" "Restorative hand cream? In a blue jar?" "Oh, good," her mother said. "I use it all the time. It absolutely works miracles." Tamiya was glad to hear that. "I've got a meeting tomorrow morning," her mother told her, "but if you want, I can cancel and take you to see Dr. Sanchez." "No, it's not that bad," Tamiya said. "I'll put more of the hand cream on it before I go to bed." "We'll see how it looks in the morning," her mother said. Later, Tamiya thought that maybe she should have agreed to let her mother take her to see Dr. Sanchez. At least she wouldn't have had to worry about Chad ambushing her on the way to school. "You're next, Tamiya." Still, would a 7th grade boy really beat up a 5th grade girl at school with teachers all around? She doubted it. He might just push her down or something, but then she could blame her torn sweater on him. Then Chad's parents would have to buy her a new one. In a way, it was sort of true. If it weren't for Chad, her sweater wouldn't have a hole in it. Once again, she examined the hole in her sweater. She had tried looping some of the threads back through the hole and decided that maybe it wasn't all that noticeable. Tamiya had another reason for not wanting to go to the doctor in the morning. It was something she'd never admit to her friends. She had never missed a day of school. At the end of each school year, she'd been presented with a certificate for perfect attendance. Those certificates didn't mean quite as much to her now as they had when she'd been in the 2nd and 3rd grade, but still, she hated to spoil her perfect record. Before going to bed, she said her prayers, and on this night, she included Chad Hilligus. She didn't pray for anything bad to happen to him. She asked God to help Chad find the goodness that lived inside his heart. 2 times 16 equals 32. 2 times 32 equals 64.